Hello, my little AI freaks. So last week I talked about a technique we used in the special effects industry with miniatures called greebling. And if you want to go check out that video, you figure it out, you find it, you'll get it. Anyway, and how it worked in AI. And that made me think like, well, maybe I should start talking about different techniques we used and how that impacts AI, or what kind of looks we can get out of AI using these different terms. And maybe we can just explain it a little bit more so it's not just a word that you're throwing into your prompt. So let's get into it. Oh, you son of a bitch. All right. So let's look at this, and what I want to talk about is ambient occlusion. And you guys have probably seen these in game settings and things like that. And maybe you know what it means. Maybe you don't. Maybe this is just a deeper dive. And, it's not just a switch to make things look better. So what ambient occlusion is, we're going to look at Photoshop here. So I'm going to do some drawing here. So let's say we have a sphere, and that's in a 3D space, and we have a light hitting the sphere right here. That is going to create a shadow on the opposite side. And what that is called is direct lighting. We have a light source, object, shadow. The light creates the shadow. That's that. Okay, that's our basis. What we're going to do is now, let's say we have our sphere over here. God, that's a horrible sphere. And we have a wall over here. And let's say we have a spotlight, so it is directional, shining on the wall. And this is a very powerful spotlight. So the light is hitting the wall all over like this. Oh, we need a ground too. What happens now is that light is going to bounce off the wall in all these different ways. And then it's going to hit the floor, and then it's going to hit the ball, and then off the ball it comes down here and up here and over there, and maybe this one goes here. Anyway, that is ambient lighting. It's indirect lighting. So that is light that is bouncing around our room here. So it's bouncing around our room, but it's not directly coming from the light source. That's called ambient light. How would we put that in photography? Well, in photography, like if you were using a flash on a subject outside and you took the flash away, the light that's bouncing off the ground and everything, unless they're looking directly into the sun, that's ambient light. So ambient light is kind of fill light. It's kind of bouncing all over the place, and it gives us a softer feel. All right. So we see that. All right. So the next part is ambient occlusion. Basically, let's say we have our wall and floor come together like this, and we have light bouncing from here to here, here to here. What happens is, and this is computer simulated, the closer we get into this corner, the less the light is going to bounce around. So we're only going to get a little bit light down here, and a little bit. And what these are called, it's basically, if you have a great wide wall, the center and the open areas are going to get the most light in using ambient occlusion. But the corners, that light just isn't bouncing around as much, and it's not strong enough or it's not as strong when it gets closer into it. So in these corners, we start to get ambient shadowing. And that's what ambient occlusion is. It's basically, as you go into the depth of these smaller cracks and crevices and things like that, you're going to start to get ambient occlusion. And I think technically it's described as light that indirect light that is occluded by the object itself. this is how it was explained to me. Believe me, I'm no scientist. I'm no programmer. They're very smart people that came up with this. This is how it was explained to me like 20 years ago. This is what ambient occlusion is ambient light does not penetrate these tight little corners. All right, we're good with that? We're good with that. Excellent. All right, so this next image, this is a render I did out of Maya, I would say probably like 20 years ago. And I was starting to do a model on of a house, and I was setting up ambient occlusion pass. As you can see, it's this very soft gray gradient type of things that are the darkest areas are gradiating out from the corners, as we explained. In visual effects and stuff, when you're in the modeling stage, ambient occlusion is great because it brings out the detail of your model as you're building it and you're mapping and putting displacement maps and things like that. It's really bringing the texture out of it without a light. You're really getting to see how much detail is in the model, and that's a really important thing. Modelers as a profession usually... when they have their demo reel, they will put what they've modeled on what's called a turntable, and it spins around the 3D model. And they'll do instead of unless they're into color and lighting, and typically they will do that 3D render with an ambient occlusion render. And it's kind of a cool look. But so that's where it's important in the pre-production, but it also adds an amazing look to the post-production. So now, let's just say this house was final modeled and lit and textured and all that. Now you would take this ambient occlusion map and you would do another render that has the full color and lighting, and you would do that in all layers. And then this would be kind of the last one, and you would multiply it over your color render. And that's going to give you deep, richer shadows, ambient shadows, to go on to work in concert with your direct lighting shadows. So it's kind of two sets of shadows. You can overdo this, and if you do, your render will start to look very airbrushed. If like this, I would say is overdone. Like we shouldn't be having our gradients covering the full surface of like these roofs. It should really be tighter in. And if I were to comp this back, I don't have a color version of this, but if I were to comp this back in, I think this pass would create a very just airbrushy, just too soft. The lighting would be too soft on it, and the texturing would feel very soft. Not out of focus, just airbrushed. Like the color gradation and everything would be very soft. You can look at some really cool things, the details. Like in here, like you can see out on this area is lighter than back here, and that's because this is connecting with this, while this area here is there. It's not occluding because we have a corner there. So like that corner is just one line. So it's actually brighter in there. Really wild how this works out. And you can see a lot of detail. I'll put this image up on Discord for you guys to check out too. Anyway, that's how you use it in real life. Let's see what Midjourney does with it. All right. So I threw ambient occlusion as in the style of ambient occlusion to see what kind of renders and how Midjourney would accept this. Here's a woman in ambient occlusion. So this image to me looks like it was, if it was a computer render, it would be an ambient occlusion combined with a direct lighting pass, because I would say that we're getting not only the ambient occlusion, but we're also getting crisp lighting on the surface. So not 100. This, I would say, definitely looks like an ambient occlusion pass. This is our cheeseburger. It does have a little bit of it almost looks like a specular hit. And I'm not surprised that Midjourney isn't nailing this. I mean, it could also be pulling texture off of it. Maybe that's not this looks definitely like an ambient occlusion render. And obviously in Midjourney, we can't layer this. We can't then go and render the exact same image as a color pass and do a comp. But this does give kind of a cool look, and there are things that you'll want to know. Here would be a house rendering, and this looks like contour lines are turned on with an ambient occlusion. So we're getting our nice lines, and like an architect might use that to, simulate light bounce and shadow depth. This looks kind of ambient occluded. Absolutely, and it's really bringing out his skin texture. It probably more so than he would like, because it's making him look a little old. It's really bringing the detail of, that neck, man. Might need to tighten that up. Motorcycle. I would expect that ambient occlusion renders would work very well with automotive. The other thing that's interesting is Midjourney is adding noise in here, and that's like a lot of the gradiated areas. You would see that. I love this one. You would see that because they're not as precise. They're not perfect. 20 years ago, they weren't just perfect gradations. And I think it was because it was calculating all these points, bouncing around and stuff like that. You just weren't getting a very flat gradation. You would get noise in it. And it works. Here's an octopus. Looks about correct to me. What I would expect from ambient occlusion, and this was kind of a big deal. Now I think now they're obviously doing it in real time. Our skull, because you can turn it on and off in games, and when you turn it on in games, you're probably taking a frame rate hit because it's getting rendered in real time. We used to bake these into games when I worked at Electronic Arts. You would do an ambient occlusion pass and apply that onto your surfaces, your model surfaces, and then bake your color, basically bake it into one layer. But now they do it in real time, which is pretty freaking cool. Graphics cards and stuff can't even tell you how insane things have improved since when I started. I worked for Hellboy, I worked on fluid simulations, and my simulation, before I even started rendering images, my simulation to figure out the physics of the fluid simulation was 7 days. What a commitment. 7 days cranking. And then it was then after it was all cashed out and rendered, or not rendered, after it was all figured out and detailed, then we would go in and render it. And if messed up, that's another week. You can understand why these processes in computer graphics are so expensive. But now things have really sped up, and we get a lot of real-time stuff. There's real-time ray tracing. That's unheard of. We didn't even turn ray tracing on a lot of times unless we absolutely needed it, because it was so what we called expensive, because it would be sitting and processing. But yeah, fluid simulators on the original Hellboy, oh my gosh. I can't believe my turnaround was 8 or 9 days, because it was 7 days just to do the simulation for Liz's Fire. And it just won the commitment to do that and set it up. And, the faith that the directors and the art, my effects supervisors and stuff had in me to put something together that was going to work in 7 days. That's a lot. That is a lot. Anyway, there's our ambient occlusions from Midjourney. So if you want to, and remember, these are different than black and white. This is really should be bringing out the texture of your surface. It should be adding detail. And I know Midjourney, it's not a 3D renderer. We can't get confused by that. But it could be something cool to add to your prompt. All right, so I just wanted to show one more thing. I did this render last week with Freebles and Wimmelbuild to see what kind of detail I could pull out. And now I re-rendered it, and I added to the prompt in the style of Greebles, Wimble Build, and ambient occlusion. And I'm not expecting to get the same image out, but as a comparison, as a kind of a tag along to your prompt, this might give you a look that you're kind of looking for. And what do we see? Like, look at that. Let's A/B this thing. Here's the first one. This one's got a lot of, obviously it created an image with a lot of bounce light and global illumination. But this one, and while I understand the subjects are different and the detailing is different, we get more contrast. And it's, this surface contrast. We're getting actual blacks in this pipe. And believe me, I understand it's all a completely different thing. But I just tagged it on to the back of the prompt that I was playing with, and you can see a drastic difference. So you may not want that black and white image, gradiated image. That's a very specific kind of incomplete look unless you're going for something. But if you tag it on to the end of if you feel your images aren't getting the contrast you want, put ambient occlusion in the back. That's what it's going to build. All right. So I just thought I should show you, and I think learning tool things like this, it's going to really, as we move forward and our AI generators are become more robust, I think having this knowledge is going to be critical. So, all right. That is the comparison. All right, guys. Thank you for joining me this week. If you like this video, please comment below. I will do more of these. I'm just kind of taking a deeper dive into the techniques and different. I mean, this could open up a whole world of really interesting stuff. And I realize that, you can't use an ambient occlusion render the way we traditionally used it. But it's giving you an idea of what exactly that term is doing and what it potentially could do to your prompt. I also believe that our generators, our Midjourneys, our Adobe, we're going to get more complicated. We're going to get deeper into the the more complex choices. And I think understanding the fundamentals of ambient occlusion and I can do another video on radiosity and global illumination and what exactly that's doing. I know we've all heard these terms. We see them in settings for video games and things like that. But I really wanted to deep dive so we can understand it. And believe me, I'm not a scientist. I'm not the one that created this stuff. But I can show you how an artist applied it and used it in the visual effects industry, making movies and making video games. This stuff was important to us. And it's funny because that pass was a big deal when we started using it. And you can compare old Toy Story, the original Toy Story to the new Toy Story, and you're going to be like, oh my God, not only does it look primitive before, but it doesn't have the contrast that it does now. And that contrast is mostly because, getting a really nice ambient occlusion pass. Anyway, if you like this video, hey, tell me that you enjoyed this concept of video, because this is a new thing for me. I'm kind of I'm tiptoeing through new stuff. Tell me that you liked it. Subscribe to the channel. Get over on Discord, because I put a list together of, not a list, I put a channel in the Discord that has freebies that I'm going to be putting up. And this some of those ambient occlusion stuff I will put in there so you can take a better look at the images. Subscribe, buy the merch. People are freaking buying sweatshirts and t-shirts. I'm so psyched. I'm glad you guys love it. If you bought one, tell me what you think of it. And yeah, what else? I don't know. I'm super excited. I love trying something new, and I realized I kind of have this untapped resource of production experience that I need to share, not just art experience. All right, till next time.